Well, hello, and welcome back to science class. Today we are talking about the scientific method again. Yay! The second step of the scientific method is next. So the second step of the scientific method is to make observations and do research. So let's break it down. What are observations? Observations, you use your five senses. Your five senses. Shall we talk about it? You taste things. I already tasted it, that's why it's gone. But you taste things, but you only taste things that are yummy or things that are edible. You don't taste things like bleach or something like that because that could harm you. So you taste things only when necessary and only when safe. The next thing is to smell. Again, you only smell things that are safe, not chemicals, not things like bleach. Smell things that only are safe and when needed. The next one is to touch. Ouch! Touch can be very helpful but also can hurt, so be careful as well. Don't touch things that you shouldn't, but this is an okay thing to touch. The next one, can you hear me now? Hear. Again, not always necessary, but you use it when needed. Hear things when needed. And lastly, probably the one that you will use the most is to see, your sight. Look at things, observe, see what you see, and use it to help you. So those are observations. You also can use your own background knowledge when you're using your observations. That will help you to later on predict, which is coming on in our next step. Finally, a part of the second step is to do research. Now, research is different from observations. Observations, you're just using you, whereas research, you're actually using other people to help you. So, for example, you can use books. Encyclopedias are a good choice. Going to the library is a very good choice as well. You can use magazines and articles. Probably more common today, though, is to use the internet, to go to the Google. Now, the Google, remember, that is not a site like that you would use as a reference. That is just a search engine to take you to where you need to go. So if I'm saying what site did you use and you tell me Google, Google is not a site that you use in your reference. It is just a search engine. It takes you to a site. So how do we find good sites? We need to find sites that are reliable and not just sites that random people put together. So for example, Wikipedia is not a good site to use because anyone in the world can post to it. Wikis, that's what they are just made by people and people can post whatever they want. So for example, things like Twitter and Facebook and all of those things like Instagram are not good resources. You need to find resources that are good. So how do we determine if it's a good resource? First, we need to answer the question, who? Who created this resource? The author of the resource is going to tell us if it's a good or not. If there's no author, then that's not a very good resource because we don't even know who made it. So it could have been Mr. Johnny in his basement who just has nothing to do. So we need to find good resources that have good authors. Also, we want to look for sites that have publishers. So people who say, hey, I think your stuff is good, I'm going to publish it. That tells us that it's a good site. So that answers the question, who? We look at the author, we look at the publisher. The second question is what? What is on the site that I'm looking at? So for example, is there a lot of bias? Is there a lot of opinion? Is somebody just ranting and raging about what they believe in and doesn't really have a lot of fact? We can't look at sites like that because they're not always accurate. They're based on somebody's opinion. So what is on the site? Also, we want to look and see are there a lot of grammar errors and spelling errors. If there's a lot of grammar errors and spelling errors, then that also shows you that it wasn't looked at by somebody else to say, hey, this is very good. You need to have good grammar and good spelling when you're publishing things. So that answers the question what. So who and what. Now we're going to look at the why. So why is this site up there? Is it up there just to sell you something? Is it selling you a product and trying to tell you how good their product is? If that's the case, then that is not a good site to use because obviously they're going to tell you how good their product is and not the truth. So don't use sites that are trying to sell you something or trying to give you something like that. You want sites that are educating you. Okay, so that answers the why. Then when? When was this site or this book created? Is it very recent or was it a long time ago in like the 1990s? You need to have things that are recent. So within 5 to 10 years, it is a good way to look at it. If it's even 10 years, that's kind of a long time. So try to stay within 5 to 10 years if possible. Anything beyond that is too old. It's out of date. So, step 2, again, research. Okay, so look things up. Use your observations, use your background knowledge, and this is all leading you to your next step. That's why we do this. We research, we do observations, we use our background knowledge to help us go on to the next step, which is to predict, which is what we will talk about next time. Thank you, and have a great day.